Oksana did this wonderful survey, which I'm sorry to hear only a few people filled out, but as a result of that, she has some interesting things and even a pre-recorded interview we're going to watch also with Peter Staples. Okay, so it's all yours, lady. Da-da-da-da.
Thank you very much, Judith. If you haven't watched our previous webinar with Peter, he worked with Max Cade, and he then worked and lived with Isabel Cade doing workshops on the mind mirror. And he has a great bit of knowledge on in general, neurofeedback, neurophysiology, like in-depth knowledge, really. And I'm not mentioning just the understanding of these enlightened states and spirituality. So my idea, Judith, was that maybe for now I could show my interview with Peter, and that will give you kind of a sample of the conversation that we could all have afterwards, okay? While talking to Peter, I actually was talking about my own observations as well, and he complimented me a lot because clearly he has deeper and better and more, I don't know, wholesome understanding of the thing. Okay, so I'm going to do a screen share. And I also understand that that special exercise or meditation, it really deserves a little bit more attention and time. Because when we talk about landmarks, that's one thing, but when we talk about the other meditation, it's the other thing. So if we have time, I'll talk about mine later on. What was my idea behind this topic in general? So the idea was that while doing visualization exercises, specified by Anna Weiss, I found that different people react differently, but certain things, they almost like, 99% they trigger the same reaction. For example, when you say, beware of splinters, they instantly open like their delta. Because this is like security, safety radar. And if beware, just the word beware probably is the trigger for delta. And say, I don't know, what was it? Anything related to blue, like the ocean, the sea, the sky, will trigger theta. And it's almost like it's constant, And I thought maybe I'm just the beginner. Maybe those people who are more experienced and have a longer story, they have found that there are other certain like triggers, landmarks out there ready to be used. They were just not mentioned maybe, and I thought, oh, that may be a good way for us to share all that. And on top, if you watched George's webinar on creativity, he shared his special, like he likes his star meditation, creative star. He shared it with us, and then I thought, okay, probably every person has his own favorite, I don't know, trick, exercise, meditation that helps him or her personally to get there faster. And I thought it would be nice if you all just share that. So I explained both parts of my survey, and that's what I really liked your answer because I found them quite creative, really. Because the question was, please list your observations of words, symbols, images that help to boost listed below brainwaves or hemispheres. So, beta, you wrote focus.
I'll tell you where this comes from. Is Izzy and I realised that if you gave people exercises to do, to take away, and they were more than about a minute, they just wouldn't do them. And ideally, if you could get something down to about 10 seconds, they're much more likely to do it. And so a long sequence is fine in the context of a workshop or a one-to-one, but it's not something I would rely on anyone actually doing on their own kind of thing, unless they felt that way moved. And actually, there were, the first time I'm not sure quite, they probably came from Max's stuff, but the first time I was actually taken through this sequence was in an Anna workshop in London, and she did 1 minute alpha, 1 minute bring beta, and 1 minute alpha beta, and they're actually she's probably got them in a book somewhere, but they're the Max Cade Foundation paper we did, biofeedback and high states of consciousness, they're in there, and that's pretty much the way she did them in the class. With this one where your hand goes up and down with the breathing, that sort of thing. And they were 1 minuters, and we used to certainly give those to people to do. As far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't really care to say how well it works for someone else. It's like if you need to get to a state, you want to do it quickly, basically. So they're sort of trigger words. And I think the thing with the focus, again, I don't know how sound this is, experimentation point of view, but my sense is there's two quite different ways of using attention. One is focus, and one is peripheral broad. It runs right through nature. It's like if you look at the animals that are hunters, have their eyes close together, and they have the ability to zone in on a very small area from a long distance. And the ones that are hunted, like the rabbits and the cows, have eyes around the side, and they're much more sensitive to movement, because it's their survival. And if you look at, there's an experiment to look at the way chess players concentrate and focus, and what you find is the difference between, say, the international masters and the kind of county level players is that the international masters would spend much more of the time looking at a very small area of the board. So they would have decided the key part to what's going to determine the action now is within a few squares of the board, and that's where their attention would be focused in a kind of very continuous way. Whereas players who weren't so good would spread it much more over the whole board. So that's part of, so this is, when I say beta, it's basically focused. I mean, beta per se, I don't see as much problem producing that if you're awake. It's focused beta. So that's the word.
Yeah, how do you say it? You just say be focused, or do you say just the word focus for someone to maybe just feel better, the beta state and hold it for 1 minute? You would say be focused.
Oh, I wouldn't, not for a minute. No. It's kind of like in a class, you might say to a kid, pay attention. But the trouble with pay attention, it's not that specific. It might listen to me. If you say focus, to my mind, that's much more specific.
Okay.
In fact, people do, and they, people get irritated when they're told focus. Focus,
I'm sure that everyone kind of even understands it on some subconscious level instantly. It just, there's something there already.
Yeah, because it's built into neurology and the way the senses work. And the problem with beta is that it does get us distracted, or you get distracted and your beta goes out. That kind of thing. Yeah, and so it's kind of like you need to have a bit of a grip on it.
And I remember, because in Anna Weiss's book, she would say that, like, think, and it should instantly bring your beta too. I'm not taking her book stuff, I'm just taking your own stuff, what you like most, or your personal observations, and you say instant, that's the big trigger, really good one.
Yeah, well, think to me would imply verbal content, whereas focus is not so specific. It may or may not, you see. It's more about the attention.
Let's move on. For alpha, you said the space around.
Absolutely, yes. Well, that's the complement, if you like, to the focus. This is having a sense of the space around, absolutely. Particularly, I think, auditory, because sound tends to be much more peripheral and going on all over the place, whereas because of the way the eye works, you tend to zone in on particular things. If you close your eyes and just become aware of the sound around, most people, that will produce an alpha state. And if they open the eyes and keep the sense of connection, they'll probably stay in alpha. I say that, I mean, I've known people who have come to classes for years and never produced alpha. Astonishing. And one day they do, and it's just normal after that. You wonder what's going on inside.
Found with my little experience again, I found that for me personally, living in the woods, surrounded by lots of birds, Australia is famous for number of birds, and as well as spiders and flies and all birds' food. So you can always hear the birds where I live, and as we live in the hills in a beautiful area, I can hear birds here and there and there. So for me, it's really, if I wake up in the morning and, to boost alpha, I just start listening to the birds, and they're here and there, and they sing in different tonalities, and I can feel how my whole presence just spreads almost like over the hills. You can almost feel it. They cover the whole, space around. And I also found, but I'm not sure whether this word relates to alpha or it relates more to theta, but it did help. It's mentioned, I think, in Anna's book. When I saw that, say, a person is losing the bridge, losing alpha, I would say, you are safe and secure. And just this safe and secure, it's just that sense of security. It opens alpha as well. They're not scared anymore. They kind of, yeah, I feel good. I'm okay. I'm taken care of. And then just remind them, if there is something you don't like, you can change it and do it. Go and change it. And so it's like safe and secure. And these were two words that were keeping people, opening the bridge back, because they were dropping out for some, I don't know, whatever reason. These were the right words to bring them back.
Comes down to whether they believe you. Well, you see, that's it. That's a quality Max said, but you find people who are good at leading groups, just the nature of their demeanour and their voice will put people into a secure state.
Maybe it was my voice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And some people who are nervy, you'll find it's hard work getting people relaxed, because everyone just pick up on that nerviness.
Maybe
that's really important.
Yeah, maybe it was like
sort of meditation masters. It's just presence. Really, they don't see say anything much. Max was pretty serious in a way. He wouldn't explain much. He'd do what he was going to do. Well, this was a sort of background as a scientist. He said, never explain yourself. He said, tell them what you're going to tell them. But if people ask awkward questions, you're not obliged to give answers.
I guess we can move on to theta. And you said floating, and you said Venice?
The city of Venice, yes.
The city of Venice.
That's really personal. Maybe these are not the best answers, because it's not based on how people respond in classes. That's just one for me. Have you ever been to Venice?
I've been to Venice.
It's just something else. You see, everything about Venice it's got this sense of floating. Izzy and I went on the Orient Express from London and across Europe and into Venice. And have you seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Basically half real and half animation. And at one point they're going to Toontown, and the gates open. They sort of go through this gateway, and everything is then cartoon land. And coming out of the station in Venice, it's just like that. It's a fairly mundane station. You open the door, and it comes on the Grand Canal, and by pure chance, there was a wedding party going by on gondola, 6 across, with the bride and groom and the guitars and singing, all this, just going along like you'd come out in fairyland. Anyway, we did have a go on a gondola, and when we came back home, I happened to mention to Izzy, I said, I'm having these dreams where there's no real images and there's no words. I just have the sensation of floating. The dream was a kinesthetic sensation of floating, in a boat, like rocking a bit backwards and forwards. And she said, well, that's a funny thing, because so have I. And it's just that whole thing. I think it may be a little bit related to blue as well. I think you sort of associate blue with water and, maybe floating as well. But it's like a dreamland, really. But if you haven't been there, it wouldn't work in the same way. It would be more a visual thing.
But would you say people in the floating tank are most likely drifting into their theta?
Well, I think it's not unlikely. I've never had a go, but
I can only say that from my personal experience, I've never been to this floating tank myself, but I almost every day I swim in the creek, and I really like that sensation. I just put my head down, because head is quite heavy, and as soon as I put it down and just close my eyes and just float, really allow myself to float, that changes my state. It's amazing. It's very subtle, but you feel the difference. And I wasn't sure whether it was once again alpha or theta, or maybe both. I was just drifting down. I was also experimenting, and I was just experimenting with bodyboard, floating the bodyboard, paddling with the flippers, and just putting my head down and watching the reflections from the sky and the trees and whatever in the water. it instantly takes you somewhere. Just you drift away. I think
Yeah,
it's definitely
absolutely.
alpha and then deeper, because it's very
Yeah.
calming, it's very soothing. It feels like, oh, I'm going back to my, and another to me, I say I'm going back to my childhood. That's how I felt around 6.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was at home and loved and surrounded by my loving family.
And I think with childhood often there is a sense of dreamlike, because you don't get the same continuity and coherence you get when you're older. It tends to be sequences which you flash back to, that kind of thing. Yeah. Well, if you could find a way of monitoring, I mean, I'd be really interested to see them in a rotation tank.
Yeah, I don't know how I can monitor that in the water. I mean, with my face in the water, but when my face is up, maybe I could, but it does, it's just the reflection, because it's not perfect, you know, your eyes cannot really focus. And with my, I thought I was looking in this reflection of trees and sky and clouds, and I thought, wow, that's what detached awareness is, because I'm detached. I can't really focus on anything because it's water, and it's kind of moving all the time. And
you know, when I was saying it's the kind of countenance, you know, energy of somebody who's leading a group who will impart a sense of safety for where people can go, and I think in the same way the kinesthetic sense of a freedom of floating, again, probably leads people into, I would think, a fairly featurey state. I mean, if you're close to dropping off to sleep, it will certainly be featurey.
And with water, what I also noticed, I thought in Russia we have this fortune telling, when you have all these rituals where you have water. In ancient Russia, all the young girls, they were putting a candle and the water, and they were looking, once again, either in the mirror or on the reflection on the water surface. So it was similar to that. And like now people look at the crystal balls, and I thought, oh, it must be all about the same.
Yeah, well, I think, yes, I could go with that.
Yeah. Okay. So then Delta, reach out.
Yes, it sort of relates a little bit like focused and peripheral, but it's more searching, if you like. It's like, where do you go if you can't find your keys, and they're somewhere around the house, probably, you know, where do you go? And it's like, you could do it in a kind of beatery way and just manically in a kind of systematic way try and go through everything, or you could just stop and say, well, when did I last have them? And the answer is not necessarily 3 o'clock yesterday. It's a feeling of coming in from the car and whatever it is, that kind of thing. So it's really a sense of reconnecting with something which you've got experience of. Reaching out in Delta doesn't have to be something you've got experience of, but that would be a practical application kind of thing. So it's kind of like, it's a strategy. And if somebody's got, say, creative block, the problem is they're not accessing the right state. So how are you going to change that? And best thing is try different things. You know, if it's stuck, then more of the same is not going to help. So it's like different things. And, you know, you find if you just pick up, if you can get a kind of theme, a sense of a theme, which is a bit like the key, if you like, and go, where would it take me to find that? You know, that it's going to kind of promote that sort of delta type reaching out. I don't know if the words would do it as such, because that's again probably got a personal meaning, but I think it would be quite easy to guide people into a useful delta aspect along those lines. Let's put it that way. I mean, for my mind, all this stuff is how is it going to help you when you go out into the big wide world and change your attention, you know, and that kind of thing. That's really what it's all about, and that's why you want quick, easy, and hopefully reasonably successful strategies.
No, but I was surprised personally to find that beware always triggers that. Beware, just like instantly, we all have this survival instinct on.
You just want to produce delta, or do you want it in some useful way? It's going to help you in a positive way rather than avoiding a negative.
Yeah. I can say that probably when, from my, again, little experience, people, when you take them, like, see the landscape from the airplane, just their peripheral attention just, you know, opens up, and that delta opens up. and it's their
Oh, wow.
radar is opening up wherever you go. So they imagine that they're going high up and they can see, I don't know, the ocean and landscape and all of that, and they get there. They do. So
It's interesting. I asked Jeffrey Blundell once about a way of representing a delta state, assuming you're not asleep, that is. And he said for him it's something like, if you imagine a clothesline and there's images pegged to it, and they're sort of separate, and you've got a way of, or you could imagine like the frames of a cine film, you know, each frame is another bit of movement, but they're spaced out, they're physically separate in space, and the experience of content of it would be kind of traveling through it, but you're looking at it in a way where you're not actually experiencing something you're doing. That would be probably more like a theta state if you were doing it. You ask people who've been in maybe road accidents or they've managed to avoid them, you know, as you can see the situation about to happen, and it's kind of like the rate at which time moves slows right down. So it's like you've got more time to respond to things as the events unfold, and the implication is that something you could be doing at any time. It's just some survival response has got you into that state of consciousness at that time, and that might be enough to let you avoid it. That's certainly kind of, that can happen in, say, martial arts. You know, the way people respond very quickly is I think they have a sense of the events being spaced further apart in time. So you get more opportunity to move between them, that kind of thing. So I mean, that's all there in their neurology somewhere. It's just, I think we have a sort of cultural sense of how time should work, and that tends to be very dominating normally, and that's what keeps people out of those states when they're awake. Trouble is, when they're asleep, you don't know what they're doing.
You have this ability somewhere, and maybe. Yeah. Another example, you just reminded me, because I almost forgot all these things, so I really appreciate. When we are in beta, when we hear beta, the voice is very loud. And it's hard to avoid. It's usually some critic kind of saying, not good, do more, and it's like doing all this all the time, struggle. And then when you hear your intuition, say, I don't know, you go into the shop, and you're suddenly thinking of umbrella or something, it's just such a subtle thing. Like, it's like instant, like a falling star, you know, in the sky. It's like, it's so fast. And usually we ignore that. And I know it's really like, ding, and it's gone. And if you pay attention to that, and if you learn not to ignore that, just sun, and there is no sign of rain, and there could be any evidence, because I had this many times, being in the shop and thinking, buy it, and I'm, no, it's not on my list, I'm not buying. Then coming home, I'm making a cake, and that was the ingredient, missing one, as if I knew.
I think having an awareness of that is part of what goes with higher states. Things come to you because they're necessary at that point in time, not because it's any obvious logical sequence or anything like that. Are you familiar with NLP?
Yeah.
Yeah, like Richard Bandler's book, Using Your Brain for Change, is essentially about, addressing things like phobias by making the quality of the image go smaller, and you can get, the way you're kind of describing, loud noises are critical and positive ones are quiet, and once you're able to intervene yourself, you see, you could swap that around, but you've got to be able to stand back from the process. Mm-hmm. And all that kind of stuff is really about having the choice of, I mean, in his book, I suppose he's describing as a therapist using that approach, but there's nothing to stop it using it for yourself once you're able to detach from the process. I think that's part of the importance, like of the alpha in the awakened mind, is that you can be aware of what's going on to a state where you can then shift the attention the way you want it to. I mean, that's part of what we're talking about, really. It's not just about in a class, about this response. It's more like, when I need this response, can I invoke it? And also recognize what's going on, really, rather than just change it anyway. Like with the missing ingredient, don't just make the voice small. Try and work out, is this the voice I should be following?
We should learn to adjust the volume and not associate us too much with the critic or.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's certainly true. But also, it's like when you get, suppose you get an impression, oh, I shouldn't be on that flight, or I shouldn't go by car on that train. But you see, it could just be rubbish, or it could be really important, and that's part of the problem. Being able to distinguish those within yourself, and it's just part of what living's about, really. I mean, with any luck, you get a sense of what is important, but a lot of sort of false positives, if you like.
Yeah, I completely agree. I agree, but in that sense, we could just simply learn to listen to our body, and most likely in some situations, you just feel your body is just, no, I don't want it, no. And it's very, very loud signals from your body. And he said, no, I committed to be there, to do this, to meet that person. And then you suddenly realize that, oh, it wasn't necessary that day, or it wasn't necessary at all. Just something has changed in the universe, the stars have changed their positions in the sky. It's not relevant anymore. Hemispheric concepts, right hemisphere, feel, and left hemisphere structure, find the structure. Could you comment on that?
Again, it's probably kind of got a personal quality. What I found, for example, if I'm on a course, probably like in IT or something like that, I mean, I have done this and then gone on the mind mirror and I find there's an enormous amount of left brain, theta and delta. And it's like all this stuff is being pieced into a general structure of personal knowledge, if you like. So there's all these inputs, but they're not integrated. And somehow there's a process which is, I suppose, largely subconscious, where the pieces fit together. And that's very much, to my mind, a left brain thing. It shows very much for me, typically on the bottom side of the scale on the left brain. And that will determine how well I can, if you like, generalize what's been learned. You learn something in a context, and then in a different context, can that be applied? And it will come down to it having been related to personal structure of knowledge, if you like. Whereas the right brain stuff, all kind of dreamy, it doesn't have that sort of structure.
I very well resonate with what you are saying, because I was just doing my personal meditation, and I found that there is some point where I kind of lose all the obstacles. You have a problem, and you kind of, wherever you look, you see another problem and another block and another block and another block. And then at some point you just drift into some space. As I say, there are no blocks, there are no fences. So it's the space where everything is possible. And it feels really good. You feel this connection, you feel this wholeness. Yeah, so I agree. And I guess we can,
Max used to have one, and the goose is in the bottle. How does the goose get out of the bottle? Oh, it's out.
Something like that. Something like that. And I know that our mind is always struggling, and it's always providing, I don't know, usually it's some material from the past, some memories from the past. So I'm not talking about creativity. You try to kind of bring things from the future and in the new combinations and new ways that you never tried before. But instead of just drifting into the past and finding the problems and blocks and fears from the past. So that's where it's really, I don't know, left will be more about the past and right will be more about the future. And maybe looking into NLP, I should double check that. That's how they, if you know all these eye keys, eye movements, how they, and whether you align or whether you are really remembering the actual event in the past by where your eyes go when you reply to the question. Are you imagining it in line, or are you just really telling your memories?
And the metaphor for the progress of time in Western culture is always from left to right.
Makes sense. And in my personal experience with Judith, I remember during one of the sessions I had too much gamma, and I don't know, after coffee or Coca-Cola or something that I shouldn't have really, because it burns me out completely. And I had too much left brain gamma, and we did some meditation on, I think, personal transformation, where I had really lots of theta, and that kind of rebalanced my gamma to the right more. So it was more about loving experience, and going into that love, it just balanced back my gamma, and I felt much, much, much better instead of being in that buzzing, worried state, really.
That's what it's about, isn't it? Being able to shift state when it's not working. That's one thing I get with painting. My favorite medium is watercolor, because it works best when you do it once. You know, with other media like oil and acrylic, you go back and get over the top of things. But the idea with watercolor is you get it right, and the brilliance of the picture is basically the white paper, you know, where it's left white or where it comes through the lighter pigments. And the approach really is try and work out how you're going to do a picture, or at least part of a picture, and if necessary, you know, do sketches and try things out and all that. And then when you do it, you just do it. Don't stop. Just kind of do it. So that, you know, the first part is very much a structured, left brain driven, at least, process, but the actual doing is not. It's much more whole brain and right brain really. And you know, it'll all be about, you know, if you not necessarily a dialogue, but it's something akin to attention here, attention there, what needs to be done there, that kind of stuff. It's almost each mark, there is a sense of this needs to go there, that needs to be there, that kind of stuff. But it's not a dialogue or anything. It's a verbal dialogue anyway. But you know, take the process is a meditative process. That's why people paint, basically. It's not whether the result's any good or not. It's just doing it.
It's just doing it. It's just doing it. And it's like with every creative process, really. And I remember a friend of mine talking about he had some practice at a Buddhist monastery as a monk, and it was very unusual experience, you know, where they have all this discipline, very strict discipline, very strict rituals, what you do, when you do, and for him, it was a very good lesson, because he said, actually, you need this discipline because you create containers of time within which you can relax and actually do more. So stop worrying and messing around, fussing around, but just you have this time to do this particular thing, and it ensures your full presence. You can really relax and enjoy and be fully in the process, rather than everywhere trying to think of all the things at once. That's what I mean. I'm very much like that, trying to be here and there, and then just
Well, I find if there's something I have to do, I work best in limited time constraints. You can't muck around. It's sort of imposing that kind of temporal discipline.
I suggest we move to the last part, and last part was you have your special exercise or trick or meditation that helps you to the desirable state quickly. And here is what you wrote: flip between total external sensory input with no internal activity and total internalized activity. For example, solving a problem using internal images and dialogue back and forth about 20 seconds each time. Could you give me an example? Because I was trying to imagine that.
It could be something like, let's say, okay, 20 seconds, I want the square root of 1063. Okay, so how are you going to do that? So I go, well, it'd be something times itself. 2020 is 400, that's not enough. 250, that's far too much. Okay, and because there's quite a lot of dialogue and also maybe not so much visual on that, it takes my attention away from, obviously, I'm explaining to you, I'm not doing it now because I'm talking about it, but if you're a bit more zoned in, then the idea is it's totally internalized. Or if you're on a more visual one, it might be something like this. Imagine there's a balance, okay, and you've got an apple and you've got an orange, and the orange is peeled, and there's, say, 9 segments to the orange, and the apple is cut into thirds. That's a mix of visual and verbal. Again, it's kind of a trial and error thing. Okay. So if you could put half of each, if you could put half the apple on one, half the orange on the other, it would balance, you see. So but as you've got 9 segments of orange, you can't do that because 4 is going to be on one side and 5 is on the other. So you get the idea anyway.
Yes. So
you won't reach a solution for that in 20 seconds, will you? The idea is it can totally engross you visually. And
part of this exercise is something that will help you to get to reach hemispheric balance, or were you thinking of it as just a nice exercise to warm up your mind and awaken it?
The main problem people have is that their states are not tidy. Doing something and then you start getting a critical internal dialogue. So you're actually doing 2 different things. And either one is okay, but they're not okay together. And the problem, like children tend to be more zoned in on experience through the senses rather than internalized. I think there's a lot of internal stuff going on, but it's not the kind of dialogue you get when you're older. I think Western education and probably most education tends to gear you towards much more internalized activity. In other words, your attention is being diverted to internal imagery and sound and so on. I think it's a little bit like the story you said of the monks in the monastery. You do one thing and then you stop and you do something else. And if you're so busy with that, then that's what you're doing. You're not doing something else. The achievement for most people on that is stopping the internal stuff, stopping your attention being diverted by internal imagery and dialogue typically. When you stop, you get a total transition, so you're just aware of the sounds and what you're seeing, and if you can pull that off, the dialogue pretty much stops. And so if you have a short exercise which makes that clear distinction, you find very soon the states get tidier.
If you were given a task or decide yourself to write down an exercise that will help people to and correct me if I got you right. So by internalized, you actually mean this inner chatter, or
and visual and pictures, yeah.
And pictures, and then the opposite of that, according to you, was sensualization, just real experience of like real interaction with the world, not just abstract.
Connected to the senses.
The first one, which is internalized, is kind of, it can be abstract, quite abstract, right? And it can be even detached from reality if you are not in your senses. You may be caught up in some fears of your past.
I find it more difficult if you do it with an emotional content. That's part of the problem with both, but particularly the internalized one, is you get out of it 20 seconds unless somebody's telling you. You don't have the sense of time in the same way, but you could have something that makes a ting every 20 seconds.
Flip between total external sensory input with no internal activity and total internalized activity. I understand now. I understand now. So it's kind of, you are sensing things and then you're totally focusing on your mind, and then you're switching back and forth, and that basically trains your switch, or I can say it's that remote control that actually helps you to identify, oh, I am listening to critic program right now, or I'm listening to intuition program right now, and I can switch and change the volume because I have remote control.
Well, look, if you can do that exercise cleanly, you're well on the way. I mean, for me, you see, my field is IT, and a lot of the IT work is working in that internalized space. So there'll be an inner dialogue, and there's a sense of all this stuff going on in space, and it's quite easy to find you're disregarding what's going on outside. And in reality, if you're not careful, the kind of dialogue thread messes you up.
The mind can trick you, the critic will put you down, you will lose your attention. I'm not saying you're losing your power, such big words.
You're a little dog for a walk on a lead. Well, you're not taking the dog, are you? The dog's taking you.
So I think it was amazing conversation. I think we'll have a great collection and deeper understanding of what and how these states and landmarks and keys interrelate.
I think it's great what you're doing,
Thank you. And see you sometime later again.
Yes, I'm sure.
Have a lovely day. Yes, bye.
Thank you.
Well done.
And just to finish it from my side and Peter's side, I want to add a few little things, because I didn't mention actually all of these landmarks that I pointed out. So regarding theta, and very often it ends up leading to evolved pattern. So actually any things that you like. So some people, they like chocolate and strawberry. Some people, they like, I don't know, roses. Some people, they like dancing. And instantly, whatever they like. I had a woman who likes airplanes and piloting. Like, she actually took some lessons of piloting. So whenever I say you are piloting, or any reference to airplane and flights, she's there. She's instantly there. And another thing, anything related to love and warmth. So it can be, sun is quite a popular symbol in general, I think very archetypal. And for other people, it could be just a hug of a friend or a smile, or like any social warmth as well, not just physical warmth, but social warmth. Say you're going to a party with friends and you instantly show the best kind of evolved mind pattern. That's what happened in my experience. And then definitely in this category fall the things like floating, or flying, or dancing. They can be slightly different to people, but they, with this ease of movement and just being, and that's quite typical for theta. And another interesting experience I had with delta was when I had a regression session with the person who studied this Michael Newton regression meditations, and just to take me deeper into the meditation, into past life memories, he just said, okay, you can't see anything, it's just dark, but look down at your feet and tell me what you see. And apparently I dropped down instantly. I suddenly just saw my feet and like, oh yes, I'm a girl, I can see some fancy shoes. So I found myself there. So these were my observations, and I mentioned quite a few into Peter. I would like to hear from people who are present at this webinar, if they had things to add. That would be really lovely to hear if they can add to our discussion, or if they feel that they are willing to do another little interview with me. I'll be very happy to do that, because Judith, as you noticed, every person like really needs to comment, because otherwise it's just very dry and it might not be helpful.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to have little snippets that we can patch into webinars, just as a reminder that of the importance of landmarks, even if you're self-training. You know, get to 50, use your landmark, get to 50 to reach 100, rather than start at 0 and have to work your way to 50 through the audio cues, for sure.
Yeah. I didn't mention my particular, if we have a little bit, few minutes, maybe 5 minutes more, I'll take the time of 5 minutes and tell about my special exercise that I come across recently. I actually have even a presentation made on that. So if you like, I can quickly take you through. I think we should finish it up, at least for me.
Bravo.
And Peter.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, then I'm going to share screens again. I think what I will be talking about will be quite helpful to every practitioner or psychotherapy. Come across a Russian doctor and a scientist who set up a system of health management. I do understand that it doesn't sound very well in English, because we haven't really translated all this stuff into English yet. But he's talking about how you can work with your health yourself to help yourself to heal maybe serious diseases. And he has lots of people coming to him with all sorts of physical and mental problems. and helping them to fix these problems, or helping other relatively healthy people to stay healthy for longer and stay not just healthy in a narrow sense, but stay really healthy in a bigger sense, where you self-actualize, where you fulfill your potential, where you really live your mission on earth. His whole system is based on physiology of living systems. So we are not talking here about any religion or any belief system. It's pure science. So it's based on primarily Russian School of Physiology of living systems. So I personally call it, these are natural laws, or higher order, or that's how physics works. It's really these odds principles, universal principles of life that we should comply with. It's better to know about them rather than ignore them, because you are part of this life, you're part of this nature, and if you contradict, if you fail to comply, you will pay a price in the form of symptoms, diseases, and all sorts of problems, be it with health, be it relationship, be it financial problems. So his health embraces just success and self-actualization in general. Key thing in his whole system is practice of silence. You may call it meditation, but it doesn't actually imply that you are sitting into meditative state and you kind of some guided stuff, visualizations, or you just try to do silent meditation. Yes, it's called practice of silence, but I'll try to explain what exactly he means by that. And it's not quite Vipassana. I know many people probably heard of Buddhist trainings and similar stuff, but I'll point out the differences. So purpose of practice of silence is actually to help yourself to, as Peter said, our mind is very untidy. So we are full of things floating there, all this mental garbage from the past, all these distractions and worries and voices. So it means our mind usually, as I mentioned, takes us away. We drift away from the present moment. We drift away from the reality. So we are caught up in our internalized world, abstract world, detached. So we are not in sync. And when you're not in sync with reality, it's really hard to move on. It's really hard to have progress and do things because you don't have the traction with reality. So first thing is synchronize with reality. Second thing is to reconnect with your true goals. And here, one important moment is that goal is the thing that is driving our perception and behavior. It's in physiology. So we actually can anticipate some future result, and we don't have this result, but we have an idea of this result, right? How it feels like, what it will be like, at least in some sensual rough form maybe, if not in detailed words. So it's really important to have that connection with true goal, because that kind of cuts or ensures focus and concentration of your life force, your energy, your resources, and helps to filter everything irrelevant and help you get where you need to get. And then actually when you're doing this practice, it's also helps your body to regenerate. He's a doctor and he done a lot of research and projects on regeneration. So it is proven that when you down and take all the obstacles out, your body is regenerating, because it's self-regulation. If you know about homeostasis, self-regulation is basically our nature. Everything in nature balances itself and tries to put you back into balance if you lose it. So when you take away all your resistance, all your struggle, your body is regenerating. So to put it in very short way, we do the practice of silence. We are not just not talking, right? We are not just silent in silence. We are listening. So it's that thing when you are completely open, the beginner mind, when you do not know how things should be anymore. You just switch on and you explore. You trust the universe. You trust what will come in, or you set your phone on, reception mode. You are receiving now. You are not acting outwards. So it also means no doing. You don't have to express. We are very much human doings, not human beings. You are totally focused on being, feeling, and sensing. So your attention goes inwards and you are more connected with your senses. again, if you have some thoughts, this is the state where you just observe them. You don't follow, you don't chase your thoughts, you don't struggle. You try to focus on your goal. And talking about goals, actually, any life form wants to survive and evolve, or wants to be healthy and kind of keep on living. No expectations. Yes, we do have lots of expectations. We, for some reason, believe that we know how things should be, and it's, in a way, we try overimpose our will on the universe, saying we know how things should be. So here, we just allow things to unfold in any form. We don't have ready forms for the universe, you know, to mold, that we're trying to offer. We allow things to open up and unfold. We do not control. We completely surrender. And once again, I want to mention another thing here. In ethereal living systems, in physiology, you can literally see that every life organizes itself in the hierarchy. Like every cell in our body will be subject to a high hierarchy of the organ, and organ will be subject to the high hierarchy of the body, and they all kind of serve the purpose of helping the next level of the high hierarchy to do its purpose. Every cell helps organs to function. All organs function together to help our organism to function, and we as people are part of a bigger organism of humanity, or the whole nature in that sense. And the thing is, we don't have much control really, because all your purposes, your missions, they are submitted by the systems of high hierarchy. So it's clear there that we believe we do have control, but in reality we have quite limited control. So we don't have obligations here in this state, we have acceptance. And that was critical for me, because I have lots of kind of duties and responsibilities. And when you suddenly find these moments of no obligations, like I have this container of time, say 5 minutes, oh wonderful, I can relax in these 5 minutes and just allow myself to be as I am without any, I'm not obliged to do anything really. And then you have no tension, you make no effort even doing it right, so whatever you do is perfect. You're not fighting, you're not struggling, you have pure peace. And then you're not hurrying, you're not in the past, you are in present, you are in fully in now. And you allow the information that is coming to you to pass through you without any distortions. So you make sure that on the information level you do not distort information, because that's another thing relevant to living systems, where like from the first to the last object in technical or living system, there should be no information distortion. There should be 100 information equivalents, because when you start distorting things, you are in trouble. You are actually detaching from reality, from information reality, and you are calling troubles on yourself, because the whole system will, the universe will try to put you back to balance. And putting back to balance may be in a form of negative feedback, in form of symptoms and health problems. So it is very much like tidying up your mind, and you do not necessarily, as I said, you need to sit. You can do any activity, monotonous activity, walking, swimming, I don't know, even lying in bed. There is no prescription, but there are all these things there. And to me personally, critical differences were no obligations and no fighting, because I found that my normal state is lots of obligations, lots of fighting, and lots of drifting from the present moment, either in the past or far away into the future, but not being fully present and allowing myself to be. So that was it. I bet you try this, because it's I found when I first did that in a group with Dmitry, with his doctor and his people, I found that you know, it's like very natural balancing state, when even some other meditations seem a little bit like manipulations. And truly your body is self-balancing when you allow yourself. So there were a few things there that I said they didn't work when people just said, okay, do silent meditation. Doesn't work. There were these other components of acceptance and lack of no obligation and no fighting that were missing personally for me. So it's quite healing, and you will find that this Vipassana, which is very similar to it. And there is like special practice called the Diri amongst Australian Aboriginals, very similar to that. Non-judgmental, very deep acceptance and honest state where you're one-on-one with yourself and with the universe, and the whole world can wait. You're just listening and trying to reconnect what the universe wants from you, so that you're not overimposing your stuff. You're not trying to fight and push from your limited, mind perspective of this world, but you open up and you receive and allow things to happen, and then you take this state with you into life, into the world. That's amazing. Are you with me?
I love what you're saying there, Oxana, because one I want to make is that more than anything else, being present, meditation is about being present to yourself. And the point at which you go from external awareness to internal awareness, and then naturally drop into meditation, because it is our natural state, is the moment you become present to yourself. And it's not so hard to do that, really. I mean, it's really about finding yourself chasing your thoughts and going, wait. Let me bring this back and come back to some kind of point, and then learning to stay in that point. And once you stay, you figure out that, whoa, that's just me being present to my pure mind, my pure spirit. And that's the game changer right there, just to be present to yourself.
It gives you this.
So many distractions, but
it gives you this remote control. It gives you this distance, kind of, from all this rubbish, really, because you definitely, when you start doing this practice, you feel this, like the water full of sand floating and dirt floating, and you can't see through it because it's too messy, because that's our normal state when we are active. And you need to let these things go down and settle, so you can see, and water gets clearer, and you can see things without any distortions, right, as they really are. Because, and other things, as I said, you have all this, you want things too much, so you can't really see them because you have your idea of how things should be, and you look through your ideas, blocking the real picture, and that's why you don't have traction with reality. And whatever you do, you can't move. It's like if you made the glass is there, but it's not, it doesn't work. You have to really connect with the cup, with the glass, It's just very stupid to fight with it. And that's the problem, because I found out all my dreams, I want too much, and they are not there. It's like maybe the universe wants something else from me. And I'm doing this other things, trying to work with the thin air, and it doesn't work. That's why I don't see any results, because I completely disconnected. I caught up in my mind, in my internal world, and I lose connection. So this minutes of connection, this doctor would say, you can try doing it, of course, on a regular basis, because it trains your mind. Regularity is important. It develops that healthy habit that helps you to do this thing easily. It's like writing a program for the computer. You write it, and you then run the program. You don't write the program, write the code every single time, so you just use it. So that's the same. Or any moment where you feel that you are lost, or any moment where you feel that you're caught up in these distortions, either expectations or obligations or some lies, you just try to look better than you are. All these distortions, they create complications, and they take you away from synchronization with reality, and they end up with different problems, because reality is trying to push you back, to balance you back. And yes, physiologically healthy is our normal state. So, and health implies being not just physically healthy, but as I said, you have good relationships, you have financial health, you have enough money to realize your needs, and you are in positive emotional tone, and you are creatively, because creativity is part of it, creatively self-actualizing. So embracing all that, that kind of is happiness. So health and happiness are our natural states. It means we shouldn't impede ourselves. We shouldn't resist the reality. We should just allow things, really.
That's a wonderful, Oxana. That description is really wonderful, and it's so holistic. I mean, you're hitting everything. It's really, I loved it. It was really good. And then you're open to you can hear your intuition. Then the little that you were describing. Now you can hear that. Yeah, that was wonderful.
If you have anyone wants to say anything, you're very welcome.
Well, I wonder if meditation is the way to get us back to the way we were before we became one, and not just like as children, but also perhaps as a species. And or even if you go back to when 100 or so years ago, where the individual spent a lot more time alone and maybe didn't think as much in words as we do now, since we're so connected. And perhaps the best way for me to communicate with you is through words, but the best way for me to communicate with me is not necessarily through words. And we perhaps are trying to get back to a place where we were before as children, or using the parts of our brains that we used before we developed language that we don't use as much as we used to.
That's a great point, Alston, because I've hooked up a bunch of children, and Anna told us this as well, and it's that children have an awakened mind pattern because they haven't done all the multitasking and stressing out that puts people into high beta. So once we reduce the high beta and regain our alpha, then we are as a child. I mean, Jesus said that, be like a child, And that is about regaining your original innocence, your original ability to be present to yourself, and thereby to be present to everything else, all the infinite field of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
When I get to where I'm thinking in words, like I want to remember something to do, like buy something in the store. If I do that in words, it pulls me out of the rewards, but I can visualize myself picking the thing off the shelf in the supermarket. And I'm still thinking about it, but I'm not thinking about it in words. I can kind of shut that down and stay in the stand.
Yeah, fascinating. That should be producing alpha instead of beta. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Well, it's been really fun for me to join in here. I thank you all for your good work that's brought this to fruition. I'm really excited to get started now. I'm just at the point in my life where I think I'll make the room for this to happen. And so hopefully you'll be seeing more of me, and I'll be hearing and seeing more of all you all.
We'll be delighted. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.